Alright, so Irian Jaya was a Dutch colony that had been preparing for independence, but West Papua officially became part of Indonesia from the Act of Free Choice in 1969, and they took over. Despite being one of the most mineral-rich regions in the world, West Papua is one of the poorest parts of Indonesia. Um, West Papuans, with regards to Indonesian rule, are not recognized as being indigenous to the land they live on. Another thing is West Papuans have been calling on the UN to intervene in what has been called a slow-moving genocide. Now, a few years ago, Papuan protesters marched with signs and taped their mouths shut to stop the arrest and to stop the killings as a cry for help to Indonesia in order to end the genocide. On another note, the DPRP is the Papuan Legislative Assembly, and they said that it is regrettable that teachers and medics rarely go to the more isolated parts of West Papua, which causes a lot of poor education and poor healthcare systems because they don't go out to different parts of the land, and people are getting sick or people aren't getting the education that they need. So there's only a few parts on the island where they're getting what they need. And in 1967, a US-based multinational mining corporation named Freeport Indonesia signed its first concession agreement with Indonesia's New Order government.
Yeah. Hi, so as Matt has explained, Papua came under Indonesian control in the mid-1960s, and since then, one phrase to describe the very tenuous and strained relationship has been a national identity, or rather, Indonesia trying to forge a national identity in a place that has a vastly different culture and history. And so I'm going to be talking about imprisonment and militarization and transmigration tactics. So this on the top is a picture of the West Papuan flag that's called Morning Star. And this is the Indonesian flag. And people, the clamping down on pro-independence movements has become so severe that raising this flag can land you in jail under treason. Okay. So imprisonment and militarization. One way to illustrate the heavy hand of Indonesia and Papua is looking at the West Papua People's Petition that was submitted in September of 2017. They were submitting it to the UN Decolonization Committee in an attempt to be put back onto their list of places to investigate, pretty much. And they got nearly 2 million signatures. Many people risked their safety for in support of this document. It was signed by roughly 70% of the indigenous population and 100,000 Indonesian settlers in the region, Papua region. It was actually banned by the Indonesian government, and so it had to be smuggled out of the country to be seen at the committee, which ultimately denied their application in that year. But following this, 57 West Papuans were arrested for supporting the petition, and 54 were tortured by Indonesian security forces. And this man, Yanto Aworkian, faces a 15-year jail sentence for treason, which was actually just supporting the petition. And so Amnesty International has collected data that shows that security forces in Papua have unlawfully killed more than 95 people in the last 8 years. And statistics are actually pretty hard to come by because journalists and investigations are so limited in this region. But these statistics are pretty alarming. And transmigration is best illustrated through an example of the Trans-Papua Highway, which is supposed to be 2,500 miles when completed. And they've faced some roadblocks, like there was many people murdered last year. And just like the whole region is very mountainous and difficult to develop. But they're continuing it. The president of Indonesia says that it's to develop these very dilapidated regions and to open access to mineral-rich mountain regions. But a lot of it is just money driven, and so a lot of it is money driven, and so basically opening access into mineral land, oil, timber. A lot of deforestation will be happening if no one blocks this. A lot of land and agribusiness, for example, palm oil. Paulo and Dylan might. I'm going to take that part out. Okay. And a big question to be asking with such a big development project in a place that's already fighting against colonization is, who is this going to profit? The president of Indonesia claims that it's going to be profiting the local residents, saying that it's going to be bringing jobs. But how much is a really low wage compared to all the money they're going to be making from mining? How are we going to ensure that if this happens, that it's not like the lion's share of the money is going to like business people? And so transmigration can be illustrated through the highway, but also through the massive influx of Indonesians going into Papua, turning the indigenous population from a majority into a minority, which will weaken their voices further. And so this is all just part of how Indonesia is trying to forge a single national identity in a place that doesn't even want to be claimed by Indonesia. And yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to be talking about some of the environmental impacts that are going on through development between Indonesia and West Papua New Guinea. And they border each other with nothing but dense, extensive wildlife, rainforest, and really raw mountainous terrain. And it's important to note that any kind of development can possibly affect the natural diversity in an ecosystem. So anything above land or underwater, whatever it is, anything that is touching the natural life that has been growing there for centuries and thousands of years will be disturbed and changed in some kind of way. So Papua New Guinea holds one of the largest, most diverse and intact rainforests to this day, and one of the most diverse reef systems that are still thriving compared to other places like Australia, the Great Barrier Reef that is really dying off quite fast. So people across the world don't understand how big and diverse and beautiful Papua New Guinea is, because it seems like a very quiet, out-of-the-way kind of country. You don't really hear too much about it, at least over here in the States or in Hawaii, from my perspective. The tourism industry there is very small. It's completely opposite to somewhere like Oahu or anywhere in Hawaii. There's just not a lot of big tourist regions, not a lot of development, and yeah, a lot of money is in the mining and the agro business with palm oil, anything like that. About 65% of Papua New Guinea is rainforest that has been untouched, undeveloped, and some places even possibly unseen because of how rugged the terrain is. People don't want to go so deep and far from any civilization. Indonesia is pushing to build roads that connect these zones for development purposes. Anything like for mining or palm oil, finding minerals, any kind of natural resource that is abundant in these rainforests. Indonesia has major influence for these things for those reasons, and they want to gain military force just to increase everything about that. An example of this development is the road that they want to create. It'll go from Indonesia through parts of New Guinea, places that are extremely dense with forest, and it's estimated to be about 2,700 miles long, which is a lot, and that's a lot of land that will be cleared and disturbed and completely changed forever, basically. It'll affect a lot of Papua New Guinea's unique indigenous culture practices, and will just change pretty much everything in that region, slowly but surely. The road will go deep into the forest to reach hard, out of the way things like minerals, fossil fuels, timber, land for the palm oil plantations, things like that. Basically, any possible nook and cranny where they could find some profit out of, that's what they're going for. And economic interest is directly impacting the environment, the mining, the roads, all of that. It's all, the root cause is just the profit. And a big portion of Papua New Guinea's GDP is directly tied to the gold mining. Papua New Guinea is home to one of the biggest gold mines in the world and the second biggest copper mine in the world. But the people are still so poor. So it makes you wonder where this money is going due to the profit from this mining. The people of the land are not benefiting from this money, so where's it all going? Big companies, are the big companies helping out with the people that are so poor, or are they keeping it to themselves and just contributing to the problems, making things worse and worse in that region? So yeah.
What we have managed to cover in this presentation is the deliberate destruction of West Papuan cultural, social, and natural environments. This group of people have been oppressed for centuries, more recently in the past couple decades by the Indonesian government. What Dylan covered falls nothing short of what we are considering an ecocide. We have to understand that very little political support is being given by the global community. There's pretty obvious correlations to be made. Environmentally speaking, we have to understand that there's a lot of natural resources that can be extracted and that have not yet been extracted by these foreign corporations and foreign investment, and being done by being allowed to be done by the Indonesian government. So there's a lot of big corporations, and there's a lot of people with a lot of power that are looking to make a lot of money out of that, and hence there's not a lot of political support. There's a lot of lobbying being done for it. We also have to understand, and this has been covered in the presentation, that media has been very limited by the Indonesian government. There's no doubt that they would be very embarrassed if more people knew about what is being truly done, how these group of people are being affected, and how the land is being truly devastated. The most valuable people in this fight have to be the activists, both activists inside this territory and activists outside, and more in the international community. Also nonprofits, which are helping to gather more information and spread more awareness about this topic, which is pretty much the most important thing to do. There's been a rise in awareness of this issue in the past couple of years, but the sad reality is that there's a huge percentage that don't know. These activists, these nonprofits are holding really interesting ways of engaging with the public and engaging and also trying to figure out how to fix this problem. There's been art that's been done, huge petitions that have been signed, campaigns that have been made against different organizations, different groups of people, and that have led to different protests. This is inside of West Papua and outside of West Papua, and journalism has gathered momentum in some areas of the world covering this topic. So there's three main solutions that have to that have been established to fix this environmental and this genocide. Education is humongous. We have to understand that first of all, how valuable West Papua is towards the global ecosystem. The second largest island in the world is one of the most biologically diverse areas in the world too. So that in itself is hugely valuable. But we also have to educate ourselves about the problem of the ecocide. What is exactly happening? How is the land being damaged? And why is it being damaged? International support. With education, what follows is international support. As more people grow aware of the moral and ethical importance of fighting against these crimes, more people and more governments will listen to us. So the international support has to rise. It starts with the public, and hopefully the politics will follow. And the recognition of crimes. There's an international committee of crimes. There's different organizations, one obvious being United Nations, but there's a lot of public support that can be gathered if the right structures are put in place. The reality is that environmental laws are very new, and they are sometimes and in many places very poorly established, which doesn't allow for the accusation, and you can't really make a real case without proper laws being established. So opening dialogue about the situation and the lack of laws that are there to be able to implement is humongous step towards really focusing down on what can be done and what is being done. So there's a lot of things to learn about West Papua, but the foundation of it truly is education. I don't think there could be enough coverage about this, and we do have to understand that more efforts are being done to help this place, but more efforts are also being done to destroy this place. So which way will it go? It's up to us. You!